What's up, y'all? This is the R Mentor. Hey, welcome back. Let me ask you a question. Do you dread drawing landscapes? Does this topic make absolutely no sense to you? Have you ever had the experience of drawing a landscape and it just never comes out right, or you had a really bad time with it? Well, then you should definitely watch this entire video because I'm gonna be divulging my tips and secrets that I've been teaching for years on how to more effectively accomplish landscapes. And if you've had issues with this in the past before, listen, I don't blame you. This is a hard topic and it's different. It's very, very different. In fact, this topic is so big, I'm gonna split this up into multiple videos. So let's jump into part one here, and I'm gonna teach you some basics on things that you need to know on how to more effectively create landscapes. Let's do this.
So as we're gonna learn how to draw landscapes, it's important that we understand one very big fundamental concept about it, which is that this is going to be totally different, completely different than drawing any type of structured or man-made object. So when you're going to draw like a building or a car, or you draw a person, there's a certain structure. There are guidelines for it. When we're going to draw a landscape, we need to do instead, we need to capture just the raw organic energy of it. So in order to do that, we need to focus on our line work. So throughout this tutorial, I'm going to be focusing heavily on these two elements of line. They're going to help you more effectively create more effective landscapes. Let's check this out. Here they are.
The first line quality that you're going to have to use a lot of is what's called line weight. And line weight essentially means how hard you're pressing down or how light you're pressing down. This is essential to make sure that we have proper looking shadow areas and light areas. It's also going to give us a really nice sense of shape and form. You're also going to need to implement what's called line variation. Line variation refers to the type of strokes you're using and the directions you're making it in and the different shapes you're going to make it in, because as you're going to be creating natural objects, it's going to be essential for you to know, implement, and understand that natural objects do not have a solid structure or form. So you're going to need to approach your mark making a lot more organically than you would structured man-made materials. So let's check out how all this works together here.
So when you're drawing trees, it's important to give it a really unnatural sort of edge. So for line variation, what I'm going to do is recommend that you, just like I'm doing here, you want to institute what I call the hand wobble, which means that your pencil and your hand is going to be really uneven and jagged and wobbly. And what this will do is it'll give it a really nice profile that is very complementary to trees and bushes and general shrubs. So it's going to be much more advantageous for you to go ahead and knock out just the general foliage, the general outline of it where all the leaves are and such, rather than starting off with what most people do, which is going to be the actual trunk of the tree. If you start with the trunk, I find that it kind of locks you into that shape rather than that of the actual tree and leaves itself, which is the majority of most trees when you're drawing them. So you'll see me kind of do that more towards the beginning than at the end. And then once I go ahead and I knock out that silhouette, what I'll do next is I'll go ahead and I'll start to knock in the negative space shapes for all of the dark regions for this. Nope. So next what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll start to just knock in all of the really dark values in that tree. And I find that if I do that, then it's much easier to go ahead and put in the rest of the values, because I'll look at almost like positive and negative space. And then from there, what I'll do is I'll start to go into all the other little tiny parts of it.
Drawing forests, right, and the trees within forests, you're going to find that most of them are going to be piney forests, okay? So with that, you want to give it a really strong directional quality to it. So you'll notice how rather than me using my hand wobble, what I'm actually doing is I'm drawing a lot of little spiny lines right there. And the way that all pine trees work is that all of the spines will go towards the center of
of the actual tree itself. Now, huge mistake I would say on drawing any type of piney sort of tree would be to draw in the actual trunk. So definitely avoid that at all costs, because it's going to make yours look really cheesy and bare, like somebody just took a chainsaw and ripped it right up the middle. So watch out the rest of this will work here. So when drawing a forest, the first fundamental concept you need to know and understand is that you should absolutely not draw every single tree in the forest. That's going to take you a lifetime, and it's really not worthwhile. Instead, what I would recommend you do is see it as a large silhouette. And within that, you're going to see some smaller trees that you're going to be able to pick out just some edges from. So as you see me doing this, again, I am going to use a very strong directional line variation technique. I'm going to push down a little bit harder when I'm trying to define an edge too, or where I see a heavily shadowed area. And then once I go ahead and I draw in all of the different silhouettes and some of the edges I'm seeing from the interior trees, because again, I'm just looking at it as a whole, as a bunch, not as individual trees. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to knock in all my darkest areas. And again, that's incredibly helpful, because when you approach it like this, then it's going to be much easier for you to actually pull out those trees. And then finally, what I'll do is I'll also start to ease up on my line weight as I start to go towards the lighter valued areas, and I'll start to disperse my line work as well. And that'll give you a really solid looking forest there. Now, if you have more of a leafier forest, and you definitely just want to go ahead and follow the same exact techniques I previously have shown you and taught you about how you're going to use the hand wobble technique, and you're going to utilize that same sort of hand wobble line variation in order to capture all of the different values. Within that, again, make sure that you just watch your line weight, and you again want to just approach it as a solid cluster of trees rather than a series of individual trees. That's going to take you a long time, and it's not really going to be worth it. So as you're drawing grass, the most important quality to use over and over again is definitely going to be line weight, because you need to essentially make sure that as the grass blade is going down towards the ground, you're going to push down harder, and then as it's going up to the sky, you're going to lift up and ease off that weight. So you're constantly going to be pushing down hard towards the bottom, lighter towards the top, and then vice versa if it's more advantageous. The other thing you want to make sure that you do with grass is that you vary how it grows, so that essentially it's going to never be having two blades of grass growing in the exact same direction for it. That's incredibly important. So as I'm going to draw this first grass field here, it's going to be shorter grass. So I'm going to start always with the background when I draw grass. I find that to be the easiest way to approach it. And then as I come forward, you're going to notice that my blades of grass are going to grow longer, and they're also going to grow darker as well. So what I'm looking at as I'm drawing an entire field of grass is basically I'm going to look at where are the darkest areas, and then where the darkest patches, I'm going to knock those in. And they're going to be very small and subtle towards the background, and then towards the foreground, they're going to get very large and apparent. And then once I get all those done, then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw in some smaller, shorter, lighter blades just to fill it in as well. And again, with this, you want to vary your line weight and your line variation as well. Your line weight should get darker towards the bottom, lighter towards the top, and you should make sure that no two blades of grass really are growing in the exact same direction. Now as I'm drawing these larger, now as I'm going to draw these much longer blades of grass, what I'm going to do is follow the same procedures before, start in the back and work my way forward, but this time I'm going to be making much longer, wispier
blades of grass. This is like really overgrown, like haven't mowed your lawn in like 2 months kind of grass here. And with this, again, I'm gonna make sure that I'm pushing down harder as I come forward and as I go towards the base. And then after I'm done with that, you'll see that I'll go back and also to darken up some areas just to pull out more contrast in it too. But you really want that nice layering effect. That's why you should always work from the background to the foreground. You'll get that realistic layering effect with grass. So as I'm gonna be drawing mountains, I'm gonna be using more of a jagged, straight type of line variation with it. And what I'm also gonna do is I'm gonna push down for a harder line weight around where objects are heavily shadowed. That way I'll kind of pull up and down as I do this for where it gets light and push down again for where it gets dark. That'll give me a really nice overall basic shape and silhouette for this and help me figure out where all of my values are gonna go to. So as you're gonna be drawing mountains, you wanna go ahead and knock out the overall silhouette, just like we have the other landscape features thus far. And you'll see that I also forgot to take my own advice here. And you should definitely press down hard, give it a harder line weight wherever you see heavy shadows. So you are gonna see me go back and do this at the end of drawing my silhouette here. Once you go ahead and you knock that out, then go back and start to kind of draw in where you see the biggest shadow shapes, because those shadow shapes are going to help you fill in the rest of the entire region and figure out the rest of the forms that are happening here. Once you have that done, then you can go ahead and start to knock in like kind of the medium and then the really small shadow shapes. And then finally what you'll see me do is I'm going to be using a lot of sort of vertical and diagonal lines just to show how the mountain is cut and how it's growing. And that's going to be really essential just to showing off the overall form of the entire mountain. And the more of those little tiny marks that you do, the better it's going to look.
So we are far from done with this topic, and that's why I got to split this one up here. So make sure that you tune in next time, where I'm going to go over even more topics and different elements that you're going to need to know how to do in order to more effectively create realistic landscapes. Thanks for watching the Art Mentor, y'all. See you next time.